All right, Nick, let's talk about the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs, tough to draft at the end of a draft when you're lower down, but that means you got to get value. You got to get some steals. You got to find some players that nobody else is finding. And the Chiefs have one guy in particular they picked this draft we absolutely love. We think this is one of the underrated steals of the draft for Kansas City. I think Chiefs fans are going to love this one. We'll break it down here in just a second, but first, I'm Andrew. That's Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, Nick, as I alluded to, Kansas City, a fantastic player was grabbed in this draft in the 4th round. I would call that a steal all day long. We're talking about no other than Jaylen Royals from Utah State. Let's get into the tweet, refresh everybody's memory, and then we'll break it down on the other side. This is over from on Next Gen Stats, and it kind of already goes into a little bit of what's going on here. It says, Round 4, pick 133, the Kansas City Chiefs have selected Jaylen Royals, wide receiver out of Utah State. It says Royals earned the 6th highest next-gen stat overall draft score among wide receivers in this year's class at 82. He was one of 5 wide receivers to eclipse the 75-plus mark in both production and athleticism. That's impressive in itself. And when the Chiefs turned their card in, Royals was the last remaining player on the board with an overall score of 80 from Next Gen Stats. I think that in itself is very, very impressive. Royals, really fantastic for them to get him in the 4th round, pick number 133. That is incredible value here for the Chiefs. But let's break it down a little bit further and see what else he was able to bring to the table. You look here, there's a PFF comp chart of his 2024 grades. And you see this, you see receiving grade 80.6. He had 3 yards per route run. He had a 5.2% drop rate, 53.3% contested catch rate, and he graded out an 80.0 versus man coverage when he was one-on-one with somebody. He did very, very well. This guy was a special player, and I think that he can do some special things from the Chiefs. And there's one thing in particular I want to point out here. When you look at yards per route run, this is a metric on this channel. We like it. We think it adds to, how good is a wide receiver, how well are they able to do. And let's think about somebody on the Chiefs who's really good, and that's none other than Rashee Rice. Let's look. Last year was only 4 games played for him, so not a really great comp. Let's go back to 2023, that breakout year for Rashee Rice. What was his yards per route run that season? 2.21. So this guy is doing better than Rashee Rice did. They are also their player development manager comped him to Rashee Rice. He said he saw a very similar player in him in Royals. So this guy really looking good already for the Chiefs. And then finally, I have here just a little bio to go over how well this guy did. 2023, he was first team All Mountain West. He led the team with 1,080 receiving yards. He ranked 2nd in the FBS with a school record of 15 receiving touchdowns. Started all 13 games, had a little bit of injury in 2024, but still 2nd team All Mountain West and led the team with 55 receptions. He had 834 yards and 6 touchdowns. Really great player for the Chiefs here, Nick. I think Jaylen Royals was a steal. You look at all the stats, look what he brings to the table. To get him in the 4th round that late, I think it's very, very impressive. Curious what your thoughts are on this one, Nick. But before we get to you, Chiefs fans, in the comment section below, let us know, what do you think about this pick in the 4th round for the Chiefs? Is this going to be a next sneaky wide receiver steal for the Chiefs? Do you think it was an A? Do you think it's a C? You're not really 100% sure, but you're willing to find out. You're going to have to wait a little while on this one. Or was it an F? You hated it and there was somebody else that you wanted, and maybe tell us who that person was in the comment section below. But nonetheless, Nick, what are your thoughts on this latest out of Kansas City?
My first thought when I saw this go across the ticker, I was like, how the heck did this kid fall to the 4th round? He had a little bit of an injury concern. You brought it up his senior season, but it's not even remotely considered in terms of career threatening in any capacity. 15 receiving touchdowns in 2023, albeit not the top flight collegiate competition, but he's an elite player. 2 seasons of being a starter at Utah State, was a big time receiver. I love the consistency, by the way, 15.2 yards per reception both seasons. This is a guy who knows how to catch the football in space, does a great job working back to a quarterback, contested catches. He is a guy that can slide in and immediately help Patrick Mahomes in this offense. He could be a big play guy, but I also see him as an intermediate receiver in this offense, kind of allowing some of these other guys to work deep, like Xavier Worthy. Let him work on those screens and deep balls and allow a guy here in Royals to kind of occupy that middle area, especially as Kelsey is getting a little older. He's obviously at the end of his career. I look at Royals to me as the greatest value pick of any skilled player in the entire draft. The only reason he's not the best value pick, in other words, the best steal in the entire draft, is because Shedeur Sanders mathematically fell so far, right? If you look at the data, Shedeur Sanders was the best value. But Jaylen Royals here, he was the second best. He was a phenomenal get from Kansas City. In fact, let's pull up a graph kind of highlighting exactly what we're talking about. So you're going to see this chart in front of you here. It's just these two bars, this blue, this red on top of the blue, excuse me. So the red plus the blue is essentially Jaylen Royals' PFF big board ranking and the corresponding score, that value for that position, according to the famous Jimmy Johnson draft value chart. So PFF had him rated, I believe, 60th best prospect in the entire draft. That resulted in a corresponding value score of 300 points, the 60th pick worth 300 points. Obviously, the Chiefs got him much later than the 60th pick. In fact, the value for where the Chiefs selected Royals is represented in red. What does that mean? Everything else in blue is the value the Chiefs got in that selection. And holy smokes, guys, that is a lot of blue. We don't see graphs like this, right? Really, what you're looking for is a graph where there's any sort of blue. And if you have half or more of it blue, you've done a great job. But this is like 80-20, 90-10 value from the Kansas City Chiefs perspective. You talk about a massive steal. This is what you're talking about. The only thing that sometimes comes remotely close to this is when a first round talent falls to the second round. You don't get this kind of value with second round guys falling to the fourth round. It just doesn't happen. Someone usually trades up in the early third or middle third and gets them. It didn't happen. The Chiefs took advantage of the situation and they got themselves a heck of a receiver in Jaylen Royals. And the beautiful part about it is he gets to come into a Kansas City offense where he doesn't have to bear any serious burden, right? We know most of their playmakers are already set in stone. We know Kelsey at the tight end position, of course. Curious to see what Wiley does year two, see if he's able to take a big step, see if he's able to become a big player. I know they drafted him last year, have high hopes for him. But you look at wide receiver, Hollywood Brown, Rashee Rice, of course, Xavier Worthy. Right now, that's the receiving core. The way it's sitting now, I think we can all kind of move on from Sky Moore. Hopefully, he turns his career around. But if we're being totally honest at this point, he may be what he's going to be at this point, which is a little underwhelming. But going back to Royals, this is a guy who doesn't have to come in and catch 80 balls. He can come in and catch 40 and be a big play threat to this offense, excuse me. And that's all the Chiefs need. People, for whatever weird reason, are really sleeping on the Kansas City Chiefs right now. This is a team that obviously went to the Super Bowl. They've got the talent. They've got Mahomes. They've got Andy Reid. They've got a lot of the pieces still in place. And when you make value deals like this in the draft, there's no reason to think Kansas City can't make another run at it, right? The way you extend dynasties is finding value, is finding draft steals, and Jaylen Royals is a perfect example of that for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, Nick, and you listen to the Chiefs director of player personnel and college scouting, Ryan Nutt, and when he talks about what Royals brought to the table and kind of what they saw out of him, they basically saw a duplicate of Rashee Rice. They really liked what he brought to the table. They liked his rack ability. They liked his speed, his explosiveness, the 4.4 40, 36-inch vertical jump. They saw the explosiveness there, and then they liked what they saw at the Senior Bowl for him. But what he says here, I think, is really important. He says, his big hands, strong hands. He's very good after the catch. You saw him downfield a lot in the last few years. This kid had 7 50-yard plus touchdowns in 2023, and he was on pace to smash that record in 2024, but unfortunately, he did get injured, so he was not able to do so. But this guy is a run after the catch machine. Like you said, he's a big play machine. This is a guy that doesn't need, like you said, 80 balls a year to contribute to this offense. This is a guy who can do really, really great stuff with just minimal amount of catches. This guy's a really solid player, a big-time playmaker. He can do a lot of big things for the Chiefs. I expect to see him on the field, and you're going to just see him once he touches the ball. You're like, wow, I remember we drafted that guy in the 4th round, already scored a touchdown for us, already made a really big 15-plus yard play for us. That's going to how he's going to pop up and burst, I think, slowly, and then all at once, we're going to notice Jaylen Royals on this Kansas City Chiefs team. I think he's a great pick, and it's like you said, when you're perennially on top, the only way that you can continue to be there is finding value and finding draft steals and continue plugging that machine along. That's what the Chiefs have done here once again in Jaylen Royals. I think this was a great pickup for them.
And you go back to Patrick Mahomes' numbers last season, you look at his yards per passing attempt. In fact, even his adjusted yards per passing attempt, which factors in like sacks and turnovers and touchdowns, all career lows, right? And yards per passing attempt can usually be correlated to big play potential on offense, right? You have higher yards per attempt if you're throwing deep a lot, if you're completing a lot. Ergo, when you had Tyreek Hill, Patrick Mahomes' yards per attempt was really high. Doesn't have to be super high to win. Tom Brady made a living off of having a moderate yards per passing attempt. But because of the lack of the big plays the Chiefs' offense has had really last season and the corresponding lower numbers for Patrick Mahomes on that yards per attempt basis, it makes it a lot harder for consistent offense. Now, they find a way to get it done because Mahomes is magical. They got a great defense. But we saw it in the Super Bowl, right? It became hard for them to drive and they just fell behind and things snowballed, right? When you have a big play guy, we know Worthy can be that guy, but now you throw in Royals too. Again, I love that big play, that 50-yard touchdown. You talk about a guy that is exactly what the Chiefs need: yards after catch, the ability to turn a 10-yard slant into a 60-yard touchdown. That's what the Chiefs really need to kind of jumpstart this offense. They can drive the football on anybody, and Worthy's a guy that can take the top off the defense or catch a screen or reverse and turn it into a huge play. But they need that guy that can turn that intermediate, that 10 to 15, 20, make a guy miss and turn it into 60, 70. I think they lacked that last season. I think it was fairly obvious. And I think a lot of people are expecting Jaylen Royals to come in and fill that role very successfully. And again, the beauty of it is that I say it's all he has to do. It's still a hard task, but that's all he has to do, right? Rasheed Rice is going to do the possession stuff. Hollywood Brown is going to be involved with some stuff. Worthy's going to have his package. Kelsey's going to get his touches. They're still going to run the football. Andy Reid's going to come up with the crafty schemes. They're not throwing a lot on Jaylen Royals. Again, he's a second-round value. So with some other teams, right, they would be throwing a lot on him. They'd say, hey, listen, you're basically going to be a day one starter for us, a day one heavy contributor for us. You got to catch 75, 80 passes this season. You got to catch 4, 5, 6 a game. If Royal has a game where it's just not there and he only catches one ball, hey, the Chiefs are going to be fine. He's there for those big moments against those tough defenses where he gets those favorable matchups, like against the Eagles in the Super Bowl, one-on-one against their number 3 corner. He's a guy that can win that matchup and turn that 20-yard completion into a 60-yard touchdown. And those are the plays that can flip games, especially down the stretch. This was a phenomenal pickup for the Kansas City Chiefs. It's not only a position of need. We all understood they needed a little bit more firepower at wide receiver, but it'll be huge for them come those big-time matchups late in the postseason. And that's one of the magic of Brett Veach and Kansas City Chiefs, this organization, is every single selection, they've got a strategy. They've got a point. Okay, we're going to use this guy here. He may not be big for us every single game of the regular season, but in big moments in the postseason, that's where we're going to need him, and that's where we're going to call on him. I think Jaylen Royals fits that perfectly. I look forward to having Royals having a pretty solid regular season, but an even bigger postseason, especially in big moments for this Chiefs offense.